On a cold December evening, Sarah, a kind-hearted baker, offered food to a penniless beggar named John, who was barely surviving on the streets. What seemed like a small act of kindness became a life-changing moment neither could have imagined. Weeks later, John returned, not as the frail man she once knew, but transformed, dressed in a suit and arriving in a sleek limousine. He shared an incredible story of redemption, resilience, and how Sarah's simple gesture had sparked a series of events that turned his life around. With a heartfelt gift in hand, John was ready to repay her kindness in a way that would forever change her life. What happened next left Sarah in awe. It was a chilly evening in late December when Sarah first saw him. She had just closed her small bakery and was heading home, her arms full of unsold bread and pastries wrapped in brown paper. As she turned the corner, the dim streetlights revealed a frail figure huddled against the wall. His clothes were tattered, and his hands trembled as he clutched an old, worn blanket around his shoulders. The man looked up briefly, his eyes sunken and hollow, reflecting a deep weariness. Sarah hesitated for a moment. She had seen many homeless people on the streets, but there was something about this man's demeanor that struck her, a quiet dignity amidst his obvious suffering. Without overthinking, she approached him. "Excuse me, sir," she said softly, kneeling down beside him. "Would you like something to eat?" The man looked at her, his expression a mixture of surprise and gratitude. I don't want to trouble you," he stammered, his voice weak and raspy. "It's no trouble at all," Sarah replied with a warm smile. She handed him a loaf of bread and a small container of soup she had packed for herself. "Here, this should keep you warm." Tears welled up in the man's eyes as he accepted the food with trembling hands. "Thank you," he whispered. "You're very kind." Sarah nodded and stayed with him for a while, chatting about small things, the weather, her bakery, and how the city had changed over the years. The man, who introduced himself as John, shared snippets of his life. He had once been a skilled carpenter, but a series of unfortunate events had left him homeless and struggling to survive. Before leaving, Sarah offered him a place to sleep in her bakery storeroom, but John declined politely. "I appreciate it, ma'am, but I can't impose on you any further," he said. She respected his decision, but insisted he visit her bakery whenever he needed food. Over the following weeks, Sarah occasionally saw John near the bakery. She always made sure to pack extra meals for him, and their brief conversations became a comforting routine. John's presence, though fleeting, reminded her of the importance of kindness in a world often filled with indifference. One day, however, John stopped showing up. Sarah noticed his absence and couldn't help but worry. She asked around the neighborhood, but no one had seen him. As days turned into weeks, she began to fear the worst, her heart heavy with the thought that something terrible might have happened to him. Then, one quiet afternoon, as Sarah was closing up the bakery, she heard the sound of a car pulling up outside. She turned to see a sleek black limousine parked by the curb. Confused, she stepped outside, only to see a well-dressed man stepping out of the vehicle. His tailored suit and polished shoes were a stark contrast to the image of the man she had last seen weeks ago. "Sarah?" the man asked, his voice familiar yet filled with newfound confidence. She blinked in disbelief as she recognized the face beneath the clean shave and healthy glow. It was John. "John, is that really you?" she gasped, her hand covering her mouth in shock. He smiled warmly, his eyes sparkling with gratitude. "It's me," he said. "I've been looking for you." John explained how, shortly after Sarah had last seen him, he had been approached by a stranger who offered him help. The man, it turned out, was a representative of a local charity that provided resources for the homeless. With their assistance, John had not only found shelter, but had also reconnected with distant relatives who were eager to help him rebuild his life. But that wasn't all. Among the belongings John had salvaged from his past was a sketchbook filled with designs he had drawn during his years as a carpenter. When one of the charity workers saw his sketches, they were so impressed that they introduced him to a renowned interior design firm. The firm immediately recognized his talent and offered him a position. "It's all because of you, Sarah," John said, his voice thick with emotion. "If you hadn't shown me kindness that night, I don't know where I'd be today." Tears streamed down Sarah's face as she listened to his story. "I'm so glad you're doing well, John," she said, her voice trembling. "But you didn't have to come all this way to tell me." John shook his head. "I didn't just come to tell you. I came to repay you." He gestured toward the limousine, and moments later, a driver emerged carrying a large envelope. John handed it to Sarah, who opened it with trembling hands. Inside was a deed to a piece of prime real estate in the heart of the city. "I bought this for you," John explained. "It's a new location for your bakery, a much bigger space with better foot traffic. I know how much you've done for this community, and I want to help you grow your business." Sarah was speechless, her hands shaking as she held the deed. "John, this is too much," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's the least I can do," he replied with a warm smile. "You changed my life, Sarah. That day, when you gave me food without hesitation, it wasn't just a meal, it was hope. You didn't see me as just a beggar, you saw a person worth saving. That kindness pulled me back from the brink and reminded me that I still had something to live for." His voice wavered with emotion as he handed her a neatly wrapped envelope. "Now it's my turn to change your life." Inside was a check, a staggering amount that left Sarah speechless. Tears welled in her eyes as she realized the profound impact of her simple gesture. This was more than repayment. It was the start of a beautiful friendship. From that day forward, Sarah's bakery flourished in its new location, attracting customers from all over the city. She continued her tradition of helping those in need, always remembering the man who had reminded her of the power of compassion. As for John, he became a prominent figure in the design world, known not only for his innovative creations, but also for his compassionate heart. He used his newfound success to support charitable causes, often dedicating proceeds from his projects to homeless shelters and rehabilitation programs. He became a vocal advocate for the homeless, sharing his story to inspire others to look beyond appearances and extend kindness. Together, he and Sarah built a foundation aimed at providing meals, education, and job opportunities to those in need. They proved that even the smallest acts of kindness could ripple outward, creating waves of transformation, healing, and hope that inspired countless others to follow their example.